Rain slammed against the windshield as Grace Miller's trembling hands gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles white in the flickering glow of the streetlights. The night was wild, the kind of storm that made even seasoned drivers hesitate, but she had no choice. In the back seat, Lily whimpered weakly, her small chest rising and falling with alarming effort. Each shallow breath sent a dagger of fear deeper into Grace's heart. She glanced back at her daughter, tears blurring her vision. The fever had risen too quickly, the cough too harsh, and now every sound Lily made felt like it could be her last. "Hold on, baby, just hold on," Grace whispered, forcing her voice to steady even as her insides crumbled. Her foot pressed harder on the accelerator, splashing through puddles, ignoring the angry honks of passing cars. Every second was a battle against the clock, a race between hope and despair. The glowing red letters of emergency room finally pierced through the rain-streaked windshield. Relief and terror clashed in Grace's chest. She was here. But what if she was too late? She pulled into the hospital driveway, throwing the car into park so abruptly the engine rattled. Her door flew open, rain soaking her hair and clothes instantly. But she didn't care. She rushed around to the back, yanking the door open and scooping Lily into her arms. The child's skin was burning, her lips tinged with blue. Grace's heart clenched. "Please, God, not her," she prayed under her breath as she staggered toward the sliding doors. The automatic doors hissed open, and the bright fluorescent lights of the ER swallowed her whole. Nurses at the intake desk froze at the sight of her, then rushed forward. "She can't breathe," Grace gasped, her voice breaking. "She's burning up. Please help her." A nurse took Lily from her arms, calling out rapid instructions. Grace stumbled after them, her hair plastered to her face, shoes squeaking on the polished floor. The chaos of the emergency ward engulfed her. Beeping machines, shouted orders, the metallic scent of antiseptic, but all she could see was her daughter being wheeled through double doors. She tried to follow, but a firm hand stopped her. "Ma'am, wait here," the nurse said gently. "Let the doctor assess her first." Grace's heart thundered. Waiting was impossible, but she could do nothing else. She pressed her palm against the cold wall, her breath ragged. Every instinct screamed to stay by Lily's side, to fight the world itself if it meant saving her child. The doors swung open again, and through the blur of panic, Grace caught sight of the man who stepped in. His presence was commanding, even in the chaos. A tall figure in scrubs, sharp eyes scanning the chart handed to him. His voice, calm yet urgent, cut through the noise as he barked instructions to the team. Then his gaze lifted, just for a second, and collided with hers. Grace froze. Her throat went dry. The storm outside seemed to roar louder as recognition slammed into her. Adrian Hayes. The name echoed in her chest like a long-buried secret clawing its way to the surface. The man she had once loved more than life itself. The man she thought she would never see again. The man who had haunted her every dream and regret. But now he wasn't just a ghost of her past. He was here, alive, standing in front of her as the doctor who held her daughter's fragile life in his hands. Grace's knees nearly gave out. The desperation of a mother collided with the ache of a lost love, and the storm inside her rivaled the one tearing across the night sky. She wanted to scream, to cry, to beg him to save Lily, but her voice was trapped, choked by years of silence and secrets. Adrian looked at her again, a flicker of recognition passing through his eyes. Shock, disbelief, and something sharper, something wounded, cut across his face. But he said nothing. Instead, he turned back to Lily, his hands steady, his voice controlled. And in that moment, Grace knew two things. Her daughter's life depended on him, and fate had just forced open a door she had spent years trying to keep shut. The storm outside raged on, but inside the emergency room another storm was brewing, silent, yet heavier. Grace stood frozen near the wall, her soaked clothes clinging to her, her eyes locked on the man she thought she had buried in the past. Adrian Hayes was no longer the young dreamer she once knew. His presence commanded the room, his voice slicing through panic like a lifeline, directing nurses and technicians with precision. Every order he gave carried authority, confidence, and something more, an edge sharpened by years of battles she had not witnessed. Grace's heart pounded as she watched him lean over Lily. He checked her breathing, his hands steady, his expression unreadable. For a fleeting moment, his gaze softened as he touched Lily's forehead, but then he masked it again with professional calm. Grace felt her chest tighten. It was not just his hands saving her daughter. It was the past coming alive before her eyes. She remembered nights long ago when those same hands held hers under starlit skies, when his voice whispered promises of forever. She had walked away to protect what mattered most, but now fate had dragged her back into his orbit. Her daughter's life was balanced on his skill, and her secret teetered on the edge of exposure. Adrian straightened, snapping her back to the present. His eyes swept over her, recognition burning like a fire he tried to smother. He said her name, not loudly, but with a weight that sent shivers down her spine. Grace. Just one word, but it carried every unanswered question, every wound left to fester, every memory they shared. She wanted to speak, but her throat closed. She wanted to say, Lily is your daughter. She wanted to say, I never stopped loving you, but the fear was stronger. Fear of rejection, fear of losing Lily, fear of him hating her once he learned the truth. The machines beeped urgently, pulling Adrian's attention back to the present. He bent down again, giving instructions to the team. We need oxygen. Prepare for a possible intubation. His voice was sharp now, and Grace's heart nearly shattered. She could not lose Lily, not tonight, not after all the years she had fought alone. She pressed her hands together, whispering a prayer. Her eyes stayed fixed on Adrian, who moved like a man who carried the weight of the world but refused to let it crush him. She saw determination in him, and beneath it, a storm of emotions he kept locked away. Did he already suspect? Did he look at Lily's face and see a reflection of his own features? Grace's thoughts spun wildly as she watched the man she once loved fight to save the child who might already be his. Each second stretched into eternity. She felt the walls close in, the air heavy with suspense, and deep inside she knew this was only the beginning. Adrian had returned to her life, not by chance, but by fate's cruel hand, and the secrets she had carried alone were about to explode. The storm had not eased when the night dragged deeper, and the hospital lights burned against the darkness as if they alone could hold back despair. Grace sat in the waiting room, her wet hair clinging to her face, her hands trembling against each other. Every second felt like a knife cutting through her. She wanted to burst through those double doors and stand by her daughter's side, but she knew Adrian would never allow anyone inside when he was fighting for a life. Her chest rose and fell with uneven breaths as fragments of the past bled into the present. She remembered how she and Adrian once shared dreams of working together in clinics for the poor, how his smile used to make her believe she could conquer the world. Then she remembered the night everything shattered, the cruel words from his powerful family, the threats that left her no choice but to walk away. She carried her secret into the shadows, and she never looked back, until tonight. The doors swung open suddenly, and her heart leapt into her throat. Adrian stepped out, his face shadowed with exhaustion, his eyes dark with something more than fatigue. For a moment he did not speak, as though he was measuring his words. Grace stood, gripping the edge of the chair for support. She's stable for now, he said finally, his voice low, but heavy. But it was close, Grace. Too close. He did not look at her like any other worried parent. He looked at her as if the years between them were collapsing into this one fragile moment. Relief flooded her body, but it was quickly tangled with fear. Adrian's tone was not merely professional. It carried an undercurrent, an unspoken question clawing at the edges of his composure. He studied Lily's chart, then lifted his eyes back to Grace. Tell me about her medical history. Anything unusual? Grace's lips parted, but words would not come. She wanted to tell him everything, but the truth was dangerous. She forced herself to stay calm. She's had mild fevers before, but nothing like this. She's always been strong. Adrian's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so no one else could hear. Grace, I need the truth. Every detail could mean the difference between saving her and losing her. Her breath caught. He was close enough that she could feel the storm radiating from him. The storm of a man who had once loved her deeply and was now torn between his duty as a doctor and his unspoken need for answers. Grace's heart pounded. She wanted to confess that Lily was his daughter, that the same blood running through his veins ran through hers, that the rare condition Lily might face was not random at all. But the memory of his family's threats, their cold power, and the danger of exposing Lily to their reach paralyzed her. Adrian's eyes narrowed. For a split second, Grace saw something flicker across his face. Recognition, suspicion, perhaps even fear. He glanced back toward the doors where Lily was resting, then turned to Grace again. "I've seen that look before," he whispered almost to himself, his voice edged with pain. "She has your eyes. But there's something else." The air thickened around them. Grace's pulse hammered against her temples. She realized in that instant that Adrian was not only fighting for Lily's life, he was also fighting the gnawing suspicion that the little girl behind those doors carried more than just Grace's blood. She carried his. The monitors inside the room screamed with urgency as Lily's breathing faltered again. Adrian snapped into action, his calm but commanding voice echoing through the sterile air. Nurses rushed with oxygen tanks, a respiratory therapist adjusted the mask, and the tension climbed higher with every second. Grace stood frozen in the doorway, her heart clawing at her chest. She wanted to run in and hold her daughter, but the look on Adrian's face kept her rooted. He was no longer just a man from her past. He was the shield between Lily and death itself. "Stay with me, Lily," Adrian murmured under his breath as he guided the tube into place. His hands were steady, precise, but Grace could see the storm raging beneath his control. Every breath Lily fought for twisted a knife deeper into her soul, and every command Adrian gave only deepened her realization that her daughter's fragile existence was tied to the very man she had tried to keep away. Grace pressed her hand over her mouth to muffle her sob. Memories of her pregnancy returned with brutal clarity. The nights of loneliness, the whispers of Adrian's family warning her to disappear, the fear that her child would be taken from her before she ever had the chance to hold her. She had chosen silence to protect Lily, but now the silence was unraveling, thread by dangerous thread. Minutes stretched into an eternity before Lily's oxygen levels finally began to rise. The steady beeping of the monitors slowed, bringing the room a fragile calm. Adrian exhaled, his shoulders heavy but his eyes sharp as they locked onto Grace. He motioned the team out, leaving only the three of them in the room, Grace, Lily, and the man who had once sworn to give her the world. "She's stable again," he said quietly, his voice roughened by strain. "But this is not over. Something in her system isn't right. I need to run more tests." He paused, his gaze piercing. "And Grace, I need you to stop hiding things from me." The words struck like lightning. Grace's lips trembled, but she forced out a reply. "I'm not hiding anything." Adrian stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, his eyes filled with a storm of suspicion and hurt. "I've treated countless children, Grace. I know when a parent is holding back, and when I look at her, I see pieces of myself staring back. Don't tell me it's just coincidence." Her knees weakened under the weight of his words. The truth hovered on her tongue, aching to be spoken, but fear smothered it. If she admitted it now, she risked unleashing the wrath of the powerful family that had already stolen her past. Yet keeping the secret meant Adrian would keep digging, and she knew he was relentless when it came to answers. A sudden coughing fit from Lily shattered the standoff. Grace rushed to her side, gripping her small hand. Adrian was right there too, adjusting the mask, whispering encouragement to the little girl who unknowingly carried the power to expose everything. Grace felt the air thicken around them, the weight of secrets pressing harder, and she knew this was only the beginning of a storm, fiercer than the one outside. The waiting room had emptied, but for Grace the silence was heavier than the noise had ever been. She sat hunched forward, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles ached, her eyes locked on the closed doors that separated her from Lily. When Adrian finally walked out, his expression was carved in stone. He carried Lily's chart in one hand, but the weight in his eyes was far greater than paper could hold. He stopped in front of her, and for a moment neither spoke. The storm outside cracked with thunder, as if urging the confrontation neither of them could escape. "She's resting," Adrian said at last, his voice low but sharp. "But her condition is unusual. The tests reveal something deeper than infection or fever. There's a pattern here, Grace. A genetic marker." He leaned closer, his gaze unrelenting. and that means family history matters. All of it. Grace's throat tightened. She tried to steady her voice. I gave you everything I know. No. Adrian cut her off, his tone sharper than a blade. You gave me what was safe, not the truth. The words sliced through her. She wanted to deny it, to push back, but she saw the fury in his eyes, the kind of fury born not only from suspicion, but from betrayal. He had pieced together fragments already, and she could feel the wall crumbling around her. Why did you leave, Grace? His question was sudden, almost desperate. 10 years, and not a word. You vanished as if what we had meant nothing, and now I see your daughter lying in there, and I can't ignore what my heart is screaming at me. Grace's chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. The truth pressed at her lips, but fear clamped it down. If she confessed, Adrian's family would not just come for her. They would come for Lily. She had seen the cruelty they were capable of. She had lived it. Tears burned her eyes as she whispered, It wasn't that simple. Adrian's jaws, clenched. Then make it simple now. Is she mine? The question rang through the hallway like a thunderclap. Grace felt her knees weaken, her whole body trembling under the weight of it. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, a nurse rushed over. Dr. Hayes, we need you, now. Adrian's glare lingered on Grace, burning with unanswered questions, before he turned sharply and strode back through the doors. Grace collapsed into the chair, her face buried in her hands. She had been given a few more minutes of silence, but she knew the storm had broken. Adrian would not stop until he uncovered the truth, and the truth was the very thing she had built her life around protecting. Her heart pounded with terror and longing all at once. For years, she had dreamed of seeing him again, of telling him everything, of imagining a life where they could have been a family. But now, with Lily's fragile life tangled in the middle, the risk was greater than ever. The clock was ticking, and with every beat she knew she was running out of time to decide, reveal the truth and face the wrath of his family, or continue the lie and risk losing the only man who had ever truly loved her. The night deepened, and the hospital corridors hummed with a strange stillness, but inside Lily's room the air was heavy with unspoken truths. Grace sat at her daughter's bedside, brushing damp strands of hair from Lily's forehead, whispering prayers that barely left her lips. The monitor's rhythmic beeping was the only sound keeping her from collapsing completely, yet her heart knew this calm was temporary. Adrian was somewhere behind those doors, combing through test results, hunting for the answers Grace had fought so hard to bury. The door creaked open, and there he was. His scrubs were wrinkled, his face pale from exhaustion, but his eyes burned with a fire that left Grace breathless. He held a file in his hand, though it seemed more like a weapon than paper. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him, shutting out the world. Grace, he began, his tone low but laced with steel. I ran the advanced panels. There's something in Lily's DNA, markers that don't come from you. He paused, his gaze cutting straight through her. They come from me. The words struck like a thunderbolt. Grace's hand froze against Lily's hair. Her pulse raced as though her secret had been ripped out of her chest without warning. She tried to speak, but her throat locked. Adrian's voice hardened. You told me nothing, but the science tells me everything. She's mine, isn't she? Tears blurred Grace's vision, but still she shook her head, her lips trembling. Adrian, please, don't lie to me again, he snapped, his voice cracking with fury and heartbreak. He took a step closer, his chest rising and falling sharply. I've spent years wondering why you disappeared, why you left me without a word, why every night I cursed myself for not fighting harder to find you. And now I see it. Your silence wasn't just about leaving me, it was about hiding her. Grace finally broke, the damn avowal, her strength crumbling. I had no choice, she whispered, her tears falling freely now. Your family. They told me they would destroy me, destroy her, if I stayed. I thought I was protecting her. I thought I was protecting you. Adrian's eyes widened, his fury warring with shock. He staggered back slightly as though the ground beneath him had shifted. They knew? His voice was hoarse, almost unrecognizable. They knew and they forced you away? Grace nodded, her shoulders shaking as years of pain bled into the room. I carried her alone because I couldn't let them take her. I couldn't let them win. Silence fell, broken only by Lily's soft breaths and the steady monitor. Adrian turned toward his daughter, his hand trembling as he reached out and gently touched her tiny fingers. His lips pressed together as if he was holding back 1,000 words. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked with a rawness Grace had never heard before. All this time, she was mine, and I missed every moment of her life because of their lies. Grace's heart shattered at the sound of his grief. She had feared his anger, his rejection, but this sorrow was worse. It was unbearable. She wanted to reach for him, to tell him she still loved him, but before she could, the monitor suddenly spiked, its alarm shrieking. Adrian snapped into action, grabbing equipment, shouting for assistance. Grace clutched Lily's hand, terror consuming her as the room filled with panic once more. The secret was no longer hidden, but now the fight was greater than ever. This wasn't just about the truth anymore, it was about keeping their daughter alive long enough to see the dawn. The shrill alarm faded as Lily's breathing steadied again under Adrian's steady hands, but the terror still clung to Grace's chest like chains. She sat at the edge of the bed, clutching Lily's fragile fingers while Adrian stood frozen at the monitors, his eyes locked on the numbers until they smoothed into calmer rhythms. Relief flickered across his face, but it didn't last. His gaze shifted to Grace, and what she saw there was more frightening than anger. It was resolve. He spoke quietly, almost too calmly, and that calmness carried more weight than rage ever could. They don't get to take her from me, not again, not my family, not anyone. His voice was low, but dangerous, the kind of tone that made Grace's heart twist with both fear and hope. She knew what it meant. Adrian wasn't going to let this secret remain buried anymore. The door pushed open before Grace could answer. A tall woman in an expensive coat stepped inside, her heels clicking against the tile. Her sharp eyes swept over Lily in the bed, then to Grace, and finally landed on Adrian. Grace's stomach turned to ice. She recognized that face, Evelyn Hayes, Adrian's elder sister, the woman who once promised that if Grace stayed, she would ruin her life and bury her child's future before it began. "You kept yourself busy, Adrian," Evelyn said coldly, her voice laced with venom. "Imagine my surprise when I was informed that a child with our family's blood is lying in this hospital, hidden away for years." Grace's body went rigid, her every instinct screaming to shield Lily from the predator standing before her. Adrian's jaw tightened, his entire posture shifting, as though preparing for war. "Leave," he growled, his voice like steel, but Evelyn only smiled, a smile that held no warmth. "Do you really think you can erase us? Do you think you can keep her out of reach? Our father may be gone, but his legacy lives. That child is a Hayes, and the world will know it, whether you want it or not." Grace rose to her feet, her fear boiling into fury. "She's not yours to claim. She's mine. I raised her. I protected her when you all wanted her gone." Her voice shook but didn't break, her body trembling like a shield made of glass but refusing to shatter. Evelyn's gaze cut like a blade. "You think you can fight us? You're nothing, Grace. You always were." Adrian stepped between them, his broad frame blocking Evelyn's path. His voice was low, controlled, but every word pulsed with fire. "You will never lay a hand on her. I don't care what power you think you have. I'm not the boy you controlled a decade ago. I'm her father, and I will burn every bridge in this family before I let you near her." For the first time, Evelyn's expression faltered, her confidence flickering at the defiance in his voice. But she recovered quickly, her lips curling into a dangerous smile. "You'll regret this, Adrian. Both of you will." With a sharp turn, she left, her heels echoing down the corridor like a countdown to war. Grace collapsed back into the chair, her body trembling, her eyes darting to Lily as if to reassure herself that she was still safe. Adrian knelt beside her, his hand hovering just above hers, torn between anger and desperation. "They won't stop now. They'll come harder, faster. But I swear, Grace, I will fight them. For her, for you." Grace looked at him, her heart pounding with fear and something even more dangerous. Hope. She knew the storm outside the hospital was nothing compared to the storm that had just been unleashed inside. The Hayes family had found them, And this time there would be no running. The night blurred into morning, but there was no sense of peace when the sun rose over the hospital. Grace had barely slept, her body slumped beside Lily's bed, her fingers still wrapped protectively around her daughter's small hand. Every beep of the monitor reassured her that Lily was still with her, but the echo of Evelyn's words haunted the silence. The Hayes family knew. That meant everything she feared was now crashing toward her like an unstoppable wave. The door burst open with a suddenness that made Grace's heart jolt. Adrian strode in, his face hard, his phone clenched in his fist. He looked as if he had been through a war already. His jaw was set, his eyes blazing with defiance, but beneath that fury, Grace saw something else. Fear. "They've filed a petition," he said, his voice rough and clipped. "The Hayes board has already pushed it through the court. They're demanding emergency custody of Lily, claiming you're unfit to raise her alone." Grace's breath left her body, as if she had been struck. She staggered to her feet, clutching the edge of the bed to keep from falling. "No, they can't. They can't take her. She's all I have." Adrian stepped closer, his hand almost reaching for her before he pulled back, torn between his fury and his helplessness. "They think they own everything they touch, Grace. They've been building this case in the shadows for years. The second they suspected, they moved. But I won't let them win. Not this time." Her voice cracked as she whispered, "You don't know what they're capable of. They destroyed me once. They'll destroy me again." Adrian's hand finally closed over hers, gripping it tightly, his strength pouring into her trembling body. "Then we fight together. You're not alone anymore. They may have power, but so do I now. And I will use every bit of it to protect Lily." The moment between them was shattered when the door opened again. This time it wasn't Evelyn. A man in a dark suit entered, carrying a folder and wearing a smile that held no warmth. His words dripped with arrogance. "Grace Miller, I represent the Hayes family. By order of the court, we'll be reviewing custody of your daughter immediately. It would be wise not to resist." Grace's knees buckled, but Adrian stepped forward, his body a wall between the man and Lily's bed. His voice was steel, cutting through the tension. "You tell them they'll have to drag me through hell before I let them near her. She is not a bargaining chip, and she is not their legacy to claim." The man's smile didn't falter, but his eyes darkened. "You'll regret standing against us, Dr. Hayes. You always do." He turned and left, the door slamming shut behind him, leaving the weight of his threat hanging in the air like poison. Grace collapsed onto the chair, her face buried in her hands. "They're going to take her, Adrian. I can't lose her." Adrian knelt in front of her, his voice low but unyielding. "Look at me, Grace. I lost you once because I was too blind to see what they did. I will not lose her. I will not lose you again. They're powerful, but I've built my own power, and I'll burn it all down before I let them steal our daughter." Grace lifted her tear-filled eyes to his, and for the first time, she felt the truth in his words. This wasn't just about Lily anymore. It was about redemption, about reclaiming everything stolen from them. But deep inside, she knew the Hayes family would not back down without blood. The morning dragged into a blur of tense hours, every sound in the hospital magnified until Grace felt as if the walls themselves were closing in. Adrian had been on calls, his voice sharp and unyielding as he battled lawyers and board members, while Grace remained at Lily's side, refusing to let go of her daughter's hand. Each time Lily stirred, weak but alive, Grace whispered promises she wasn't sure she could keep. That no one would ever take her away, that her mother would fight until her last breath. When Adrian returned, his face was grim. He shut the door behind him and leaned against it, his chest heaving with restrained fury. "They've set a hearing for tomorrow morning. They want Lily transferred into temporary custody until the case is reviewed." Grace's heart shattered. "Tomorrow? They can't do this so fast." "They can when they control the judges," Adrian said bitterly. He crossed the room and sank into the chair opposite her. For a long moment, silence stretched between them, heavy with fear and unspoken regret. Then he leaned forward, his eyes burning into hers. "Grace, we need to fight them together, not just in court. We need to tell the truth, all of it, No more hiding. Grace shook her head, panic surging through her veins. If we expose everything, they'll come at us harder. They'll destroy me in front of the world, paint me as nothing, and they'll twist it until Lily looks like she belongs to them. Adrian's voice dropped lower, carrying a raw desperation that shook her. If we don't, we'll lose her anyway. And I won't lose her. His voice cracked at the last words, and Grace saw something she hadn't seen in years. The man beneath the armor, the boy who once held her dreams in his hands. Before she could answer, the lights flickered. The storm outside had grown worse, thunder rattling the windows. A sudden knock at the door broke through. The moment. Adrian moved quickly, opening it only a crack. A nurse slipped in, her face pale. "Dr. Hayes, I thought you should know. There's a group of men in suits downstairs. They say they're here for the child. They're demanding access." Grace shot to her feet, her blood running cold. "They're here already?" Adrian's fists clenched. "Over my dead body." He ordered the nurse to stall them, then turned to Grace. "We don't have time. We need to move her. Now." Grace's breath caught. "Move her? She's too weak." "It's the only way," Adrian cut in, his voice fierce. "If they get her now, even for one night, they'll twist the narrative and we'll never get her back. But if we keep her safe until the hearing, we have a chance." The room pulsed with tension, the monitors beeping steadily as Lily lay unaware of the storm surrounding her. Grace's mind screamed with fear, but when she looked into Adrian's eyes, she saw not just determination, but something stronger. A vow. He would fight until the last breath, and she realized she had no choice but to trust him. She nodded slowly, her voice trembling. "Then we fight. Together." The decision sealed itself in the storm outside, lightning splitting the sky as if marking the moment. They would risk everything to protect Lily, and in doing so, the truth between them could no longer remain buried. But as Adrian reached for Grace's hand, a shadow fell across the glass window of the door. Someone was watching. The storm outside reached its peak, lightning clawing across the sky as if the heavens themselves were furious. Inside the hospital, tension coiled tighter with every passing second. Grace clutched Lily against her, whispering softly while Adrian paced like a predator trapped in a cage. He had already sent word to a trusted colleague to prepare a secure room, away from the Hayes family's reach, but he knew it wasn't a no. Their power wasn't only in money, it was in secrets, manipulation, and the lies they had spun for years. The door burst open without warning. Evelyn entered, flanked by two men in suits, their eyes cold and sharp. She carried a folder in her hand, her smile vicious. "It's over, Adrian. The court is on our side, and by tomorrow that child will be ours. You can fight, but the law will crush you." Adrian stepped forward, his voice a controlled storm. "You think you've already won, but this time, Evelyn, the truth isn't yours to bury." Grace held her breath, fear clawing at her throat. Evelyn tossed the folder onto the bed, papers spilling out, photographs of Grace from years ago, documents twisted to make her look reckless, unstable. "Unfit mother," Evelyn sneered. "The judge will see this, and Lily will never leave our hands again." Grace's knees weakened, but Adrian caught the folder, flipping through the lies, his fury igniting. "I should have known. It was you. You forged this narrative, just like you destroyed our lives 10 years ago." His eyes lifted, burning into his sister. "You told her to leave me, didn't you? You threatened her." Evelyn's mask slipped for the first time, her silence betraying the truth. Grace's tears spilled as she looked at Adrian, her voice breaking. "It wasn't me who chose to walk away. It was them. They promised to ruin me, to ruin Lily before she was even born. I left because it was the only way to keep her safe." Adrian's world cracked open, rage and heartbreak colliding. He turned back to Evelyn, his voice thundering. "You destroyed everything we had. You stole years from me, from Grace, from my daughter. And for what? Power? Control?" Evelyn's composure faltered, but before she could speak, Adrian pulled a letter from his pocket, his hand trembling. "I found this in Father's files. He knew Lily was mine. He ordered you to bury the truth." He slammed the letter down. You think the court is on your side? Tomorrow they'll see this, and when they do, you'll be the ones exposed." The room froze. Evelyn's face drained of color, the men behind her shifting uneasily. For the first time, Adrian saw fear in her eyes. She spun on her heel and stormed out, her plans crumbling in the storm of truth. Silence followed, heavy but filled with something new. Adrian turned to Grace, his eyes softening as the weight of years finally lifted. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I should have fought harder. I should have found you. I can't change the past, but I can fight for our future. For Lily. For us." Grace's tears shimmered in the dim light. She reached for his hand, her voice trembling but strong. "We've both carried scars, Adrian, but maybe it's time to heal them together." Adrian looked down at Lily, her small chest rising steadily, her fragile body stronger than before. He bent, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "She's our daughter, and I swear, I'll protect her with everything I am." The storm outside began to fade, dawn breaking through the clouds. The first light spilled through the hospital window, casting gold across their faces. Grace leaned into Adrian, their hands clasped over Lily's. For the first time in years, she felt safe. The Hayes family would not stop easily, but their lies had been pierced, and now Grace knew she was no longer alone in the fight. They had lost too much already, but the new day promised something different. A chance at love reborn, a family finally whole, and a future no one could tear apart.